I'm the proud parent of 19-year-old twins. They'll be 19 in June, and um, um, I guess I should also say that I'm a widow. My late husband was from the Gambia, West Africa, and I'm a black Italian in my 50s from Philadelphia.
Sorry, it's always just
You're fine.
once I get it going, we're
Nope, you're fine. Sweetie's fine. You're fine. It's nice out. I got all my stuff done that I need to. And after this, I'm going to be in the dirt with the
nice.
weeds in the yard.
Nice.
Yeah, the virus, believe it or not, has allowed for things that I would never have time for.
Yeah, it's changed a lot of people's,
Perspectives.
activities. And,
Yeah.
Yeah. And some of it's good, there's a silver lining to some of this for sure. So we met through Allison, and you want to just tell me a little bit about kind of how you connected up with Allison, and what was going on there with.
So Allison is a good friend of mine, and she is a dynamo in that her ability to digest, to consume, and then digest information, and to challenge it is uncanny. Like she's pretty awesome. And one of the things that I learned is, sometimes you don't even realize where things are going to come from. You just have to be willing and be open. I was driving a friend of mine, to a home and school meeting at 440 North Broad for the school district. And Allison happened to be speaking that day on standardized testing, and more specifically the harmful effects of testing and why we should opt our kids out. So I wasn't even going to go inside the building. I was just dropping off the elder. Actually, I was going to wait outside, and she's like, "Oh, you should come in." And I was like, "No, I'm not coming in. I'm not interested." And she was like, "Well, they have great breakfast snacks." And I was like, "I'm there." And I got up and I went inside, and and in the corner was this short white lady with all this hair like down her back, gray, and it was pretty much everywhere. And I was just looking at her, and my daughter had received test scores like the week before for a test she took the year prior, and she tested advanced. And I remember seeing the test scores, and I was like, "Oh, I don't remember hearing about this test." Like normally my Lonnie would tell me something about a test. Anyway, long story short, it was the standardized test, the PSSA, and what came out of that is Allison started talking about how the tests were being used, and when I listened to it, I realized the tests were being used to close the schools, and they were also violating our rights as parents to know what our children were being tested on, and the other part is there was no benefit to the child. So it wasn't as if they found out that they were weaker in algebra or spelling or science, and then they would help them improve based upon the outcome of the test. On top of that, my son is nonverbal. He's physically disabled through cerebral palsy and autism, and he has an IEP, and it's very specific and intentional on how he receives instruction and the best way to teach him, how he learns well. So the standardized test doesn't address any of those things, and yet it's a mandate that he too had to take, and I was very unhappy about that. So as I listened to Allison, I realized that they were taping my son without my knowledge. They were taping him as he failed the exam. For the special needs population, it's the PASA. So after she finished talking, and everybody was interested. Every parent that was in there, in my opinion, was interested. And we connected. And when I found out how she came about, her daughter was at a public school in Philadelphia as well. And when I found out that there was an option to opt our kids out, I called the principal, and that's what I did. And it just kind of set things in gear, because that year we had the most opt-outs in the city of Philadelphia, and we went hard with it. And prior to that, we didn't know each other, and we became great friends. And she is a truth teller. She exposes things. She follows the money, and she's just very humble, but determined and fearless.
Yeah, she's pretty incredible. I'm gonna make one change real quick.
I can't remember. It's Keith or Sutherland. Sandra Bullock and Jeff Bridges is another one, and it's amazing. Like he really is particular.
It's kind of disturbing movie.
Which one?
The Jagged Edge.
Yeah, it was.
You don't want to get like.
It reminds me of
get your rabbits.
Edward Norton and.
Oh yeah, that's.
Yeah, like he does one. He does a few. He does a De Niro, and he does one with Richard Gere, Primal Fear. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. That was the movie that launched his career.
Was it?
Yeah, he was kind of a nobody, but he like everybody paid attention to him after that movie. They're like, oh wow, he was good.
Oh yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You ever see Death to Smoochy?
No, but I can check that one out.
It's a weird movie. Like it's a bizarre movie, but it's like it's kind of like this aging children's TV show star.
Okay.
Like, and he gets replaced by a dinosaur. Like, but it's like kind of dark. Like it's like they're competitive. Like it's Edward Norton and who's the comedian that died? The actor that had depression.
Not Bernie Mac.
No, Robin Williams.
No. Now you go in the house.
You lost your privileges.
Yep. Oh my God! Like I'm in love with him. There's no way he.
Easy fix for that too, actually.
Get in. Get. Are you kidding me?
Cat's like, I'm gonna see what I get away with. Not much.
No, we try to let him have fresh air and grass, but now I've covered up most of the grass.
Yeah.
You know, he's just like, Mom.
Want some tape for the...
I don't mind it if you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't care. It's a lot.
So anyway, so you guys did some stuff together on the standardized testing.
Yes, opt-out movement in Philadelphia, around the Keystone exams, around the PSSAs, the PASA. So, yeah, that's where we first met, and I was fortunate enough to become friends, and you know, she's amazing. I consider her one of my best friends.
You were telling me the story how they were recording.
Right. So, in order to prove that Kaba actually took the test, they're buried inside an IEP, which can be anywhere from 60 pages to almost 200. Unless a parent checked off a box that would keep them from allowing their child to be videotaped, it was an automatic opportunity to videotape. So every child that has an IEP gets videotaped unless the parent knows to look for that and then check off that box or either uncheck it. I think it's to uncheck the box, you know, and these are templates. So, and it's a lot. It's depending on the severity of your child's situation, you know, there's a lot to read through. Anyway, that was just one example of how your rights are taken from you and you have no idea that that's the situation. Another situation was with the other twin, excuse me, my daughter Fulani, and I remember waking up because she was about to leave for school and I was trying to sleep in, and she's like, Mom, please, I need you to sign this form. And I was like, why'd you wait till the last minute? You know, the normal thing. And I'm reading over the form real quick, and the goal was to allow the school to have women of tomorrow to come in and assist her with scholarship applications. And I was very excited about that. But as I'm reading through the form and I'm just about to sign it, you know, because it's about 3 pages. And this is from the school district of Philadelphia. It says at the end, parent authorizes indefinite release of FERPA rights. And I'm like, wait, what? Why would I authorize indefinite or permanent release of the FERPA rights? First of all, what does this have to do with my FERPA rights for my child? Family Education Rights Protection Act. And so everything that's ever been in Fulani's file, whether it's medical or something around her trauma or psychological, anything that's in the school district's files could now be released indefinitely to anybody. And I was like, that has nothing to do with her getting scholarship help. And I was pissed off. So we just happened to have a school reform commission meeting that evening. I think it was that evening or the next day. And of course I testified on that. And the first thing that the superintendent said was, well, we would never do that. We would never violate, a parent's right, FERPA rights, or ask them to, release them. I had, prior to that meeting, texted the state rep, the state senator, two state reps and one state senator, to let them know that this was being done. This is the same senator, Senator Art Haywood, who had also been working with us as parents to, to get rid of the Keystone exams, because he understood the hardship and the biases that came with these exams. So that was yet another example of how embedded, if you're not really looking for these things, the opportunity is to get more and more information on your children. And so the exchange is, somebody would give her some assistance with scholarships in order for us to release our rights indefinitely. And it just didn't make sense. So of course I let Allison know about it, and this was something that we needed to take a deeper dive in. And considering my personal situation, both twins have a lot of medical needs. They were preemies, they came at 25 weeks. And, for Lonnie, for example, you don't see her autism. Her autism is actually like a gift for her. She plays about 9 instruments. She at one point was speaking at least 2 languages and studying another. And so she doesn't want to be identified by a disability. We all have disabilities. I have them, but we don't readily recognize them, whether it's being sight impaired and needing glasses or hard of hearing. So it got me thinking about how many things, we give up on a regular basis, and how things are just tracked on us without our knowledge. I have every day of my son's life, unless it's their day off or it's a holiday, I have somebody in here assisting me with all of his transfers. And I remember the agency also has a nurse that comes out every month. And at one point the nurse was like, well, we're gonna have to start coming out twice a month to check on your son. And I was like, well, yeah, no, that's not happening. My son sees his doctor, pediatrician, if you will. And he has specialists for his hydrocephalus, so he's got neurologists, orthopedic specialists, you name it. But in order for me to get the care for the transfers at the house for him, they need to come into my home to see him twice a month, when he's got all of these other things that he does automatically. And what I'm finding more and more is that I don't have agency in my own home, or it feels like I don't. It feels like I'm constantly having to provide and share information, personal and private information about me and my children, in order to get public services, like school, like healthcare. And it's disturbing, and it makes me very uncomfortable. The day I went to get my fingerprints done, I'm going to be doing some work with the census. And there's the privacy statement, and I was reading over the statement, and the FBI is, and anything that the FBI deems connected to them will now have access, not just to my fingerprints, but to my to my private information that's considered sealed, anything that would be considered under clearances. And just having to sign over all of this information in order to get help makes me very uncomfortable. I worked for the Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties years ago, and during that time, they were working on a badging system where people had to have a Social Security card. They were working on some type of a card that everybody would have to have and carry. And this was back in, I want to say, the 2002, something like 2002. And I remember feeling really uncomfortable with it, because I was like, well, why should people have to walk around carrying badges and cards? I understand having ID, but it just seemed extreme. And I feel very uncomfortable that the people that we pay and elect to office to help govern us have now created legislation, and that they tend to decide what will be enforced, when it will be enforced, but they use it on us, and they use it to I think they use it to make money. You know, we're seen as investments. We're seen as pieces in some type of gambling game. I want to say at least 3 to 4 years ago, there was legislation for video gaming terminals to be placed in every single store. VGTs is what they call them. And right around that same time, there was this game that was really weird that was ushered in, and it had to deal with Pokemon. And people were scrambling. It was like a scavenger hunt. And I kept saying to myself, this really didn't make any sense. I didn't understand why this was such a big deal. And what I think was happening is they wanted to see the public's response to something, and how hard and how fast they would go after accumulating a piece of information. And they embedded it somehow into this game. But it just seemed far more sinister than just a regular game. There was a time where I'm not sure which foundation wanted to put up millions to ensure that there was this algorithm that would be used for pre-trial bail hearings, so that judges would not on their own just make the decision on whether or not a person was viable for pre-trial bail, but to use this algorithm, and they were going to finance this here in Philadelphia. And I'm saying to myself, you've got so many different things that you can throw $1 million or more at, but you want to use this to, and the algorithm was closed. We didn't know what biases would be included in it. And that's a problem. And I think when it comes to Philadelphia, you know, predominantly black communities, we have to be conscious of what's being done to us. Because this is all about commodification. How do you monetize human beings? That's unfortunately what appears to be the goal that's going on in society right now. And it doesn't matter that we've got people that appear to be on the right side of things, whether that's political, religious, or civic. Once they're nonprofits, it feels like they're willing to forego fidelity in order to keep their nonprofit status. And you know, a lot of people would challenge that our religious institutions don't operate that way, and you know, they certainly would understand that our political institutions absolutely do operate that way. But civic, political, and religious groups now have to be scrutinized to see where their funding's coming from. You know, I consider myself a progressive, definitely a Bernie-crat, so I am far left. But even when we look at all the groups that are associated with progressive movements now, you have to look and understand where the funding's coming from, because our journalism, our media sources right now, what gets asked in the media and what gets reported is determined by who lobbies hard enough and who's paying the money to whatever that group is, whatever that group is, religious, civic, or political. And those are the things that the average American, in my opinion, don't think about. They've been conditioned by advertisement that, you know, life is hard, things move quick, you got to stay on top. That's how fast food, you know, made its entering its big movement. That people were suddenly convinced that, you know, you didn't have time to create meals, and so you needed to be able to pick everything up on the go real quick and fast. That's not true. This virus has actually told us and shown us that you do have time. It's just how you prioritize. And so this brainwashing, if you will, this self-brainwashing that we've done and this conditioning that has been done to us is, in my opinion, part of what is actually preparing us for something a lot more sinister and a lot larger, and it is connected to investments. I feel like data is the new oil. I feel like years ago, where you had to have $1.5 million just to make an investment in a portfolio around mortgage securities, what they're doing now is gambling to see how many jail cells, how many opportunities to open up more institutions, and if not institutions like brick and mortars, being able to counsel and and track people. And I think that's the new gambling source. Investors get to, in advance, pool their money together and suggest that this outcome is going to net the most profit. Similar to car insurances and health insurance plans, where I think the tie-in to how bad the neighborhood is with regard to a food desert, opportunity to clean and healthy water and food, how many power plants or gas plants or refineries are in the area. They can predict the overall health and needs of that community. And so there's going to be a financial return. And they're just savvier with it now. We have to be careful. We hear terms like 5G. What does that actually stand for? And how is it that we had no real say in deciding if that is something that should be in our cities and in our communities? And what does 5G do for us? Why do we need to be faster in receiving information? How is technology improving the conditions of our lives? Because in the Black community, in the communities that I live in, our poverty is not because we've chosen to not, be wealthy or to be economically stable. Our poverty is a result of our trauma and years of legislation that has been imposed upon us in our communities. It's a lot more than that, but that's what just readily comes to the surface when I think about it.
Yeah, so on the COVID thing, I mean, a lot of people are scared and worried about and concerned about, the health, but I think a lot of people aren't looking at some of these other things and how it's being used for other agendas. Do you want to say something about that, or how do you feel about that? Do you think that's even accurate? Do you think that there's something else going on here in terms of how, it's being taken advantage of by some of the big techs, or do you think that, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that COVID definitely put us in an oppressed position to ask questions, to react, to direct what happens next for us. People just assimilated to what was being told. Of course, you want to believe that the legislators that you have elected and put into power are doing things in your best interest, but quite frankly, they're lobbied. And they understand how bad and how challenging employment is, and they don't want to lose their jobs. They want to stay in office. They want to be able to maintain the social economic status that they have. COVID-19, the virus, I don't think that the virus was something that wasn't talked about, that wasn't almost foreseen. I believe that 9/11, if we're going to talk about conspiracies, I believe 9/11 was, somebody deciding, hey, no, don't push back on it, because we have near misses with regard to attacks on a regular basis. But 9/11 was allowed to happen, but it came right after we had this horrible election, Al Gore and Bush. And I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Wag the Dog. I think Dustin Hoffman was in that one. I feel like oftentimes with regard to our government, there's a lot of wagging of the dog. And what that actually means is when they're distracting you from something greater or more sinister that's happening. So it's almost like what Allison was talking about with standardized testing. At one point, it was like they were reducing the tests or talking about eliminating the test. And it was because they were embedding the test in the actual work for children in school. So I do think that, getting back to the virus and the COVID-19, I feel like this was a distraction for something far more sinister that is going on. And what happens is the Democrats and the Republicans have these titles. I like to say that they're dinos, Democrats in name only, that actually just use that title because it's depending on what city you live in, if it's a predominantly a city of color, then you're going to have a more democratic voting base. And I actually feel like there is no good guy here. There is no extreme right or extreme left when it comes to what's happening to us in this country. And what we see is, people talk about the 1%, but it's not just about the 1%. Our legislators have been commodified. They have definitely sold us out and sold us down, but we have sold ourselves out because we are compliant. I do believe in resistance. I do believe that we need to be a lot more covert in what we're deciding to do next. And from a young child, I was raised to be respectful, to not challenge tradition, and to fall in line with things. Imagine, I'm an African-American Italian woman. So talk about all the layers of oppression that are just in that title. But we've been raised to not question things. And those days are over. Nobody wants to spend time in jail and be taken away from their family. Nobody wants that. But at the same time, the destruction of the planet, through environmental racism and injustice, the destruction that continues and is maintained of economic instability in order to wag the dog, to keep us distracted, to make us feel like we're barely hanging on, so that we don't move in a certain way. We need to actually not just turn the apple cart over. We need to hammer it and just disseminate it. Dismantle it. Thank you. It's a very challenging time for us. It used to be really difficult for me to walk down the street and look at young children if they could see, I couldn't make eye contact because I felt like I'm not doing enough, and I do believe in my instincts. They've served me really well, and we haven't been able to do what we need to in our smaller cities. In the city of Philadelphia, where tax abatements are like the norm, the governor just in the last, I want to say about 2 years, he provided 482 additional Keystone Opportunity Zones. These are zones that were created for blighted areas to maximize jobs and to turn the area around and make it not just profitable, but to clean it up for the community. At least that was the initial goal. It would provide the business that was trying to come in and help do this and employ the community 10 years tax abatement. But what happens is you see these businesses, first of all, you see these opportunity zones being placed in areas that clearly are not blighted. That's number one. Secondly, these businesses, they start off maybe hiring 780 something, but within a year or two, they reduce the staff to 400 something. And then once the 10-year tax abatement is, once that's over, they pick up and they move to the next area that's been designated a Keystone Opportunity Zone. So there's nobody, not just enforcing legislation, but there's nobody that's doing a forensic study and audit on what's not actually happening, or worse, what is happening as a result of, all of these breaks, not just to the rich, but breaks to, again, religious, civic, and political entities. And so the average person like me, the regular mom, where do you go? Who do you reach out to, and how do you organize in such a way? Because the minute that you are seen by an elected official and somebody, shares your name or you introduce yourself, then now you're considered a target that they want to also know your name, and they want to minimize damage by trying to get to know you. And hey, I want to work with you on this issue. And they may have understood that there was some piece of legislation that was already introduced around this that wasn't enforced. But what they're trying to do is to suppress you and to just minimize the damage that they're continuing. Because oftentimes they don't even know what their power is. They don't understand what their office can do, what their office's responsibility is, and the tools that they have. I'll give you another example of that. With regard to our city controller and our school district. So our school district receives $3.8 billion for the school year. And I remember requesting, this is right after the FERPA situation and, challenging, but I remember requesting, because I know that our former city controller, his name was Alan Bukovich, would do a report, because they didn't have full auditing power, and there would need to be a change to the charter in order for them to investigate. And he made that known, because what we were seeing with the school district is, like, in my opinion, spending on private entities to do the job that the superintendent had people in-house to do. And we didn't see enough union pushback either, where the teachers were being slammed, the schools were being closed. We have lead and asbestos. So just the calamity of reasons why you're saying, well, where's $3.whatever billion going when we have these conditions in our bricks and mortar public schools? And I remember reading a couple reports that the controller had done, and realizing that he was more than capable of being able to figure out what was going on, but he didn't have the power. And when I wrote to, I think I wrote to the Inspector General, I was pushed back on. I was told to go to the Pennsylvania Board of Education. And I also did some homework, and I found that who does have auditing power is the Auditor General, and the Auditor General's office, the Pennsylvania Board of Education. But they're going to do things from a macro level. The city controller would have it from a micro level, and they have had it from a micro level. What they have been able to get a hold of has shown errors of about $65,000 in irregular spending. And, the things that are important to us are public education, the things that determine what happens next to you as a person, your ability to communicate and critically think, all start with our public schools. And so whether it's our public schools or our public health services, these are the things that we're challenged with. These are the things that we constantly have to lobby and get groups, community groups and organizations to push back on. And these are the very things that are the foundation of what happens to us and why we're in the situation that we're in. It's not as if this is rocket science. Everything that Philadelphia has been pushing around development, zoning, developers are fine. We have enticed them enough, and why would there be just nonprofit status where they don't have to pay at all? I'll give you an example. University of Penn, for example, is the largest private employer in the city of Philadelphia, one of the largest private employers in the city of Philadelphia. Billions of dollars. And I pay more taxes than they do. I do. Jefferson, Drexel, Temple, the nonprofits get away, and they then, on top of them not paying taxes, the tuition's too high. So, it's crazy. It's like, you're getting it from both ends, and sure, you employ Philadelphians, but you employ them to do what? They're not making enough money to actually pay for quality health insurance and pay for school without going into debt. So it's this vicious cycle that we see, and nobody's speaking up for us. Now, when you think about when and where we're organized in mass so that the group of us can understand all at the same time, you're thinking about religious institutions. You're thinking about the civic groups and or the political groups, right? But they're not, because of their nonprofit status, with the exception of the political, they're not going to talk about these things. And that's a bigger problem. They're not going to unveil what they believe or maybe know because they want to keep their nonprofit status. And so we've got this vicious cycle, and we've got few people that are willing to be the Allisons that will challenge, question, and share, because she shares it. There's nothing that she won't tell you about, that she knows. She clearly shares it. And she has rubbed some people the wrong way because she's tried to make sure that they understood the connection to things. And It's sad. I'm not sure where we go from here, but I believe that you fight where you stand. And, we're far from over. My twins are 19 in June. I'm in my middle 50s, and I'm a widow. So we have to continue fighting. They didn't ask to be here, and every little kid that's born today or tomorrow is deserving of all of the great things that this country, this earth has to offer. And if we don't fight for it, if we don't raise our flags and shout and share what we know, then you're just going to see a bunch of robots. You're going to see a bunch of folks that are like conditioned and almost like surrogates.
And that's interesting because like how many people actually go and like look things up and research and whatever. That's just like they go to the Philadelphia Inquirer to tell them what's up. It's like
Fox News.
Assuming that there's Fox News or CNN or whomever, when there's a trust issue there.
Absolutely.
Or at least there should be a trust issue there.
There should be there. That's better.
But
yeah.
This goes back to the transparency thing. What is it like? Are people in the community or people that are other people starting to wake up to some of this stuff? Do you feel, or do you think that people are just kind of doubling down? I mean, like in Colorado, where I see like a lot of people are just like, I try to talk about these other issues. They're like COVID, and I'm like, but there's other stuff going on that we need to look at here.
Before COVID, we were trying to talk about it. I've got a neighbor. She walked past a little while ago. She's probably about 10, maybe 15 years my senior, and she stays on top of things. So there's definitely neighbors here and there that are just as knowledgeable, if not far more knowledgeable than I am about what's going on. And they've seen this thing. They've seen the transition of our cities and the public control and private takeover for decades now. And there's a lot of apathy as a result of that. So to answer your question, I'm not sure if more of it is apathy, which I would much rather it be that they did understand and they became apathetic, because then there's a chance to change that, right? Than people that just have no clue and are just blindsided until, things happen to them. Like with COVID, I believe that we're going to see way more deaths blamed on COVID-19 that actually were just heart attacks or some other form of disease or health issue. But there's this opportunity to just lump it all together and find financing and aid under that narrative.
So you think there's a political component to the COVID thing?
I believe that there's a political component to probably all of our problems, and definitely to COVID. How do I substantiate that? Later on, we'll do some more homework. We'll figure out. But right now we've got the House and Senate and the White House playing games with each other. It's like who can bark the loudest. I want to appear to be the hero and go after Trump on this, or you have Trump saying things that are insane, doing things that are like criminal, and we're the bystanders sitting back watching TV like this is a movie going on, and it's ridiculous. It's scary because I walk back in and I'm praying that my daughter's not watching TV. I don't want her traumatized even more about what the state of the country is. But then I have my son who is not aware of what's going on, and he's very vulnerable too. So we have to fight for him. We have to fight for her. We have to fight for all of our community, and it does begin with like clearing the slate. I'm saying clearing the slate. I actually believe we should, when it comes to politics, run a slate. But we need to run a slate based upon our issues. And we need to run an independent slate. It needs to not be from the Democratic or the Republican Party, or we need to infiltrate the Republican Party, or we need to totally flip the Democratic Party, because as it is now, the leadership does not represent us. You
want to? So I, Sherry Honkala?
Yeah, just through Allison.
Okay, so she ran for sheriff of Philadelphia. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was her campaign manager.
Get out of here! Stop. Really?
Yeah. I was.
Okay.
But I flew out from Denver, and we had a little office on Market Street. I was sleeping on the floor for like 6 months at the office, and I'd never seen corruption like out in the open, like we don't give a shit, like Kensington. But the Philadelphia politics is like a dirty on a whole other level. Like, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because people think, oh, it's a democratic city. That's a good thing. You know what I mean? like, oh,
So I went to, I was part of this group. I'm part of this group, and they're young people, and they're young people that are fed up, that have come out of the Bernie Sanders movement. I was a Bernie Sanders delegate. Many of them, probably all of them, have been Bernie Sanders delegates. And they decided to organize, and they weren't playing. And the name of that group is called Reclaim. And the name of the group that I'm part of is Neighborhood Networks. But also the Caucus of the Working Educators and a couple of other groups that are just like opt out, divided into all of that. And what came out of that was real training and the desire to actually learn how to not just lead, how to organize, and how to be an activist that push back at the right times. I went to a training, it was a week-long training, and it was one of the most powerful, traumatizing things that I have ever done in my life. And to give you an idea, I'm a former long-distance athlete, decades ago, but I used to average about 70 miles a week. So I know how to be disciplined when it's called for, but I wasn't prepared for this at all. During this week-long training, it was so intoxicating and so driven that even before day 7, I had decided that not only was I going to run for office, but I was going to run against an entrenched Democratic incumbent city council member in my district. Now, I have been a office manager for the Senate, and I shared with you before that I worked for civil rights and civil liberties, but that's so outside of politics. But this was huge because this is a two-termed entrenched Democrat city council person, also black female. And it wasn't about her, but it was about our issues not being elevated. It was about the gentrification. It was about the environmental racism. It was about our public education and how privatized and how the schools were being closed and transformed into development, It was about zoning. I'm trying to think of criminal justice, you name it. Like, I don't believe that policing is restorative in any way. Restorative justice, restorative practice, It's important to understand what it is. It's important to understand when to use it. And our criminal justice system does not show that. Our paid elected officials do not support and challenge the narratives. And so, I had just decided that I was going to run and, uplift these issues and hopefully take the seat. And then it would be complete chaos, on city council. I ran for the school board as well. And when I say complete chaos, it would have been yes, yes, hell no, and this is why, and we're not moving until we deal with this. Like, that was the response that I was interested in. Well, we actually did get somebody in because I got kicked off the ballot by the entrenched incumbent because of a financial statement that wasn't put in the right office, because things are so not transparent. But we managed to get somebody from the Working Families Party, one of my dear friends, and a kick-ass woman named Kendra Brooks. So we managed to get her in. But getting back to Philadelphia politics, my dad was actually scared. He was like, they'll kill you. And I was just like, well, they're killing me right now. I'm not sure what, slow death or like quick. But they kill me with what I see going on in communities like this. You are afraid. If you're not afraid, you're crazy. And I remember going to a fundraiser, and after I spoke, my campaign manager told me that, they liked you, but they said that you seemed really angry. I was like, how the F can I be a black woman in Philadelphia and not be in the state of anger? How can you be in this country and not be in the state of anger? Are you kidding me? You know, and I don't want to make you have to edit, but I know some of the things that I'd like to be able to say right now.
Speak your mind.
But the corruption that is so prevalent in Philadelphia's politics, I don't believe that the elected officials either think that they're so much more intelligent than us, or that we are so dumb that they should not take the time to explain things to us. With the exception of Helen Gim and Kendra Brooks, what you see or don't see, and I'm not just talking about on the council level, because it goes into state reps and state senators and Congress as well. You know, we spent time bird dogging for a second Dwight Evans around the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And he said that he opposed it, you know, but we needed him to publicly oppose it because people follow him. You know, California made a big deal and everybody got out and talked about what the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, would do to this country, right? But nobody really understood what it was all about. And so here, an elected official that is supposed to represent us, we're electing you, we're actually paying you, and we need you to speak up that you understand why this is harmful to this country, that you will represent us in Congress around opposing this. And here's why, if you didn't know. And he dodged us. He would not come out publicly and when we say publicly, that means in print or on air, you know, TV, something, and he wouldn't do it. And what we find with these elected officials is that we have to lobby them. Damn it, you're paid. Like, is any of this volunteer? You know, are you volunteering your salary? Are you like, you know, you're paid. You answer to us. You actually work for us. And so this honorable and being really nice and cordial when we see them drives me insane. I don't want to attack people. I'm not interested in that. I want results, and I want to know what you need to get those results. Right now, June the 2nd, we've got this this election coming up. And with the virus, we were working in conjunction with the city commissioner's office to make sure first of all, what we wanted was every single person registered to vote to have the ballot mailed out to them, the actual ballot mailed out to them. They're registered to vote. There's a virus that can kill people. We're supposed to shelter in place. Why do we possibly want folks to go out to the polling stations and vote? They should be at least, at bare minimum, given the option to have this ballot in their hands and to be able to drop it off in the mailbox up the street, right? The challenge that we have right now is that when we're pushing on something, it seems like we're in the moment, like we've got maybe 30 days or less to deal with it. And when we try to get in front of it, because nobody's talking about it, our media is not talking about it, co-opted, you know, because nobody is discussing it, the elected official doesn't think it's a big deal. And there's like so many less of us activists or organizers talking about this issue. So we can't get in front of things in enough time to make this something that elected officials fear. That if you don't deal with this issue, if you don't ensure that we have drop boxes at every mailbox, you know what I mean, that this is going to be geared towards the election, that every single registered voter will have a ballot, you know, sent out to them. We've got voter suppression. That's what that is, basically. There's just so many different things. The food deserts. The zoning. We have a natural gas plant in an area of Philadelphia that has one of the highest levels of asthma, for the love of God. Black community, close in the proximity to schools. Why is SEPTA building this gas plant there? If zoning can be changed for everything else, why the hell couldn't we change the zoning so that this is an environmental hazard. AMS, the air management systems, why didn't they speak up fast enough? We had to sue the city and SEPTA in order to get lawyers to help fight to make this an issue. Now, we didn't win. That gas plant is there. And between 350 and Neighbors Against the Gas Plant and another group of organized activists, there were some things that were done. You'd have to talk with Lynn Robinson or Mitch Channon to find out. Like, I think they can't operate the generator on days that have degrees that are higher or whatever. But our elected officials are supposed to be leading this. I ran because of that. I didn't run because I don't want to be scrutinized. I don't want everybody to see my face and know who I am. I'm actually relatively shy. I swear to God. I know it doesn't seem that way right now. But I want to go about my regular daily life. But it's almost like, you say to yourself, why did I have to notice that? And you have to do something about it now. But our elected officials, they signed up for that. They're paid to do that. They campaigned that they would be working and fighting for the American people. And then they get in office and suddenly, like, who is it that you're talking to? Who told you? Who oppressed you? And why aren't you doing this? And when it comes to our unions, I am a pro-union. I am for unions. But when it comes to some of our union leadership, they're not passing the baton. Same thing with the elected officials. You're not passing the baton fast enough. And what you're going to see some millennials rising up, finally getting in office, and they're going to be so pissed that they're going to look at that generation of elected officials and people that allow for things to maintain and the status quo to remain. And they're going to punish them by not fighting for the things that they need.
I used to run a documentary film festival in Denver, but it was all political, human rights documentaries, and then we'd have discussion afterward. And it's like the documentary would be like, at the end of it, it would be this bullshit like, oh, write your representative or donate or whatever. And then I'm just like, at some point it was like one of the documentaries was about things that were, like openly unconstitutional that were happening. And it's like, write your representative. And I thought, if I have to write my representative to tell them to obey the law, like, what is wrong here?
It makes me scratch. It makes me want to scratch.
So I think one of the things is like the whole concept of the wolf in sheep's clothing comes to mind, of people looking, like, especially now with COVID going on, like, people are like, afraid, and now they're looking to the leadership, and I think that what needs to happen is people need to understand that these people are your enemy.
Oh my God!
And
like, I could cry right now.
You're not gonna. You might be able to force them to do one small thing here if you really put a lot of pressure, but it's just,
it's maintaining. It's maintaining. It's wagging the dog, and it's maintenance.
1 step forward, 10 steps back.
It's not even 1 step forward. It is maintaining the oppression. It is, and it literally feels like that's exactly what's being done. While I was running, what the law enforcement in Philadelphia, for sure, I can't speak outside of that, was developing this new initiative. It was either called Pinpoint. It wasn't Pointman. I think that was with the veterans. It was Pinpoint. And what it was doing was trying to encourage more surveillance. So I'm saying to myself, what the hell? So you want to capture us in our poverty, scrambling and desperate on tape, instead of actually dealing with the underlying issue of why people are in poverty. You should not be forced to wait 4 years after you graduate from college to eat. Like, what the hell? Like, be homeless, go to college, starve, watch your family lose everything. And then you're in the line with everybody else that has a degree for these antiquated solutions that aren't really solutions, with fossil fuels and everything else. With renewable energy alone, there's reasons to have jobs. And these jobs that demand training don't require you to deal with it for 4 years before you understand what the hell's going on. But that's what we're dealing with right now. We're dealing with added and additional surveillance to finger point. And this, in my opinion, this goes back to stay in your lane, cross your legs, fold your hands, and be seen and not heard. And this, you know where that came from? That came for me from church. That came from me. That oppression came from wanting to be a good little girl and mind my manners and listen to my elders. my elders are the reason right now that we have climate situations that we do. My elders right now are the reason that we have so many people incarcerated in this country, because when there was an opportunity to push back. Now, I'm not saying that they haven't had challenges with race relations. That's not what I'm saying, but because there have been definite challenges with race relations. But when did we become so docile as to allow people in office to actually continuously lie to us and not like ever say, hey, listen, you recorded this 4 years ago saying you were going to work on this issue, education, economic justice, environment. You said that you were going to be working on these things 4 years ago. What the hell? Your report card is all F's. You haven't, not only have you not worked on this, we're worrying about another gas plant being built in Center City. Like, you failed. You're out of here. But it costs money. So we need to have, we need a gift ban. We need free, was it not free elections? I'm trying to remember what it was, where a cap on election financing. But even if we have all of those things, we're still screwed, because if you follow protocol and rules, it always leads back to the people that are oppressing you being in control. I don't want them to even see it coming. I feel like honest to God, and I'm not Black Panther, although, I really do think that the Black Panthers and Malcolm X, I would not be turning the other cheek. That's not going to happen. But I don't think that we should be as vocal about what we are looking at and planning to do next. I do feel like there needs to be plans on how we not return, because I don't ever feel like this country was ever really fair, if we're gonna really tell it. But I do feel like there has to be some conversations, plans, and actions that push back on the status quo. And I'm talking about in a very deliberate way. And while that's happening, at the same time, making sure that the average rank and file person, the stakeholders, are being educated on, this is what was being done to you under the auspices of this by these people. And in your community, whether it's civic, religious, or political, these are the connections. That's what Allison does. She connects the dots. These are the people that knew about it and kept quiet while your kid was taken by DHS, while your kid's school was closed or privatized, so that now you gotta be in a lottery, you gotta fill out applications. Damn it, my taxes I already paid for it. It's like paying for something twice. I already paid for my kid to go to school through my taxes. Why the hell am I having to pay for private school now? Or why am I having to go through a lottery to get my kid into this charter school? And while we're at it, how come this charter school's finances aren't transparent? How come the city controller can't tell me this per pupil allocation, how all of that money is being spent? How come that doesn't happen? I feel like we need to have some more covert style action, but at the same time, we've got to find a way to educate the average everyday person. Otherwise, they're not going to be on our side. They're going to continue to assimilate and quietly bow down and go along like sheep to slaughter. How do we do that? How do we do that? I don't know. I guess we got to study some more Du Bois, Baldwin, Black Panther, Malcolm. I don't know.
Well, I think for me, it's getting it. I'm always like, what's the root? Like, you see this thing right in front of you. You see the politician. You see the action in your community. Okay, what's behind that? What's behind that curtain? What's behind that? What's that?
Oh, it's very few. It's very few that benefit, but those few that benefit are able to continuously keep this conversation of well, that person shouldn't have done this. Like, not only are they now incarcerated because, they were on drugs because the doctor gave them this prescription and didn't actually deal with the underlying root cause of the injury or whatever that was, right? You're punishing the victim for the injury. You're punishing the victim for the injury. And then you're going to get the choir to support it because it's uncomfortable to see it to begin with. But you're going to change that discomfort into guilt, into anger, that why should you have to even see that? Why are they making you look at that? Why are you having to deal with that? You had nothing to do with it. It could very well be your son or your daughter that is overprescribed something and then becomes addicted to it. And now the behavior. All of this is, you know, when we think about it, it's going back to that too. It's like the root of some type of behavior that was a result of something that was being done to them. I don't know. I feel like I just went around the bush for a second.
That's all right. That's all right. Well, I mean, that's my thing with the politicians, though. I mean, just if you I look at the politicians. I don't, you know, yes, there's a difference between Democrats and Republican, like minor, but on the big issue, like there's not that big of a difference.
They say that there's a difference between the Democrats and the Republicans, but when the Democrats hold the highest office, you know, who gets the breaks in 2007 when the bubble burst? Like, I'm the predatory lending that was going on prior to 2007. Where were the Democrats then? I'm not saying that the Democrats chose to do it, but either you chose to ignore it, therefore you were guilty by association and not caring enough to do something about it. Wall Street has always been Wall Street. This didn't just happen overnight. And so when you are in the positions of power, your priorities are suddenly different. It's again wagging the dog. You're choosing to deal with maybe some low-hanging fruit instead of actually going after whatever the real problem is that continues to oppress this country. And that is both parties. I'm certainly not pro-Republican. You know, reproduction rights, all of that stuff, I believe that that's up to me. But this is Democrat in name only, not Democrats, not true democracy. That's not what this has been. And, you know, it just feels like people, the same thing where you have to stand for your country and, you know, fight for your flag. When my country's wrong, when there is harm that's being done to somebody else that may not be from this country, that's still wrong. And I'm not supposed to stand with it because it's my country. Like, you're asking for you know, this blind loyalty. It's the same thing here. We go back to that religious piece again. That blind faith, that blind loyalty to country, and, you know, and these are the things that the brainwashing and the conditioning that are done to you as a young child, as a young Black Italian girl that is told to sit with your legs closed and your hands folded and quietly go along and listen to something that I'm like, well, I don't understand how that applies to what's going on today. You know, at second, third, and fourth grade, I'm asking critical questions on why do I have to go? And, you know, can't you just like, you know, without having the language, the words, like, can you give me a synopsis of what the hell I'm getting ready to go listen to and why that's prevalent, why that's important to me? We're not thinking enough about our younger people to do that, to tell them, okay, here's the tie-in. You don't want history to repeat itself, so this is why you need to know this. And, you know, without you having to go spend an hour in this hot building and give every time that collection plate comes around, let me just tell you what the hell you need to know about this. And here's the thing. You may not understand it. You may not even believe it right now, but I'm going to make sure that you have some facts around it. I'm going to make sure you know why you see this group of people going to this building every Sunday, right? But that's not even done. It's, again, the conditioning. You need to blindly go because separation is how they get us. You know, oh, well, that family doesn't go to church, or that family goes to church, but they don't make their daughter go, or they don't make their son go. And the millennials that have inherited all of this mess that we've made, they're rising up. They're going to come. We're not passing the baton fast enough. You know, we're clutching it. We're not going to give office up. He's too young. He's inexperienced. Well, what experience does he need that you have? Because you're under indictment. You know, your office has been found guilty of X, Y, and Z. Your staff doesn't even answer the phone. You know, somebody needs to work in a politician's office to be considered experienced. To do what? More of nothing. I want somebody that doesn't have experience politically, but has life experience and exposure, that understands our issues and is willing to struggle and fight, and not just fight, communicate. Matter of fact, not fight, but communicate, and to help find solutions together. That's what I'm interested in. I want somebody that's willing to include and communicate with all of us. Instead of feeling like suddenly because you have this title, you are now all knowing. I don't give a damn what degree you might have. You may not have walked in my shoes. You may not really know what I've been dealing with. So you can't actually speak for me. You can't relate, and you certainly can't solve my problem if you haven't had my issue. I do want to see a lot more of our younger people in office. I do want to see, like, the judges. I want to see people starting to look, and I wish that there was a way to change the law so that once you're a judge, you're not always a judge. And to look at some of the legislation that is on the books now, to actually have more of a synopsis. If we have law students going in, look at areas around education, economic justice, and instability, enforcement, and environment. Look at what's on the books now, already legislated, and what could be enforced that's here that could help us out of the conundrum that we find ourselves in. That's what I would actually, if I taught at Temple or St. Joe's or community for that matter, that's how they would get their grades, because I would have them doing that type of research. We've got enough critical thinkers right now that we can solve a lot more of what we have if we would stop pushing some ideology that, in my opinion, is past and not relevant and not helpful.
What's your hope? I mean, in all these times, it's really easy. Even I deal with this of like losing heart, losing faith, and like, our systems are all corrupt. Most people are apathetic.
Yeah.
And there's, I drive, so we have poverty in Colorado and Denver, but like nothing like, I drive out to Kensington where Sherry's at, like she's by K&A, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I forgot. Like this is like really, really, really bad,
Yeah.
And it's hard to like, keep your faith and like your hope that the change is possible, that there's a way out of this, because sometimes it feels helpless. What would you say to that in terms of like, what are the things that you hold on to that keep you focused and on
keep me from jumping off the building?
I love the phrase "eyes on the prize." You get distracted and like whatever. Just stay focused, stay on target. That sort of. What do you use? What?
Well, people were enslaved, and the indigenous. If you're looking at how we've not just been exterminated from the earth. And not just, I want to speak to black people for a second about our situation and how we were enslaved for over 400 years, and our situation, which is certainly not completely transformed and fixed. But when you can freely walk up and down the streets, and God, that sounds weird because, depending on the stand your ground law and state that you're in, you may not be able to just walk up and down the streets, right, Trayvon Martin? But there is hope, because we've come far as we've grown, as civilization has grown. We have cultivated the ability to be thinkers and to continue to rise from, whether it was the 1918 Spanish flu, slavery, Holocaust, whatever it is, we have been able to come up out of it. It was always a struggle, but it was somebody that, and not just somebody, but there were people that decided that this was worth continuing to fight for, continuing to communicate about. I don't really like using the word fight as much, but to communicate and to share. And so I believe that when we talk to other people and we take the time to slow down and listen and understand where they're coming from, that creates this dialogue and this relationship. And if we did more of that, we could build from there, and the possibilities, are still there to have a better life for our generations that are coming behind us.
I'd love to ask you one more question, and it's kind of unrelated, but it's kind of related. But another thing, I've been in Denver. We have the largest Martin Luther King Day parade, and it's very strange to go to, because there are all these corporations and there are all these politicians. In fact, Michael Nutter was in Denver at our parade last time giving a speech, and I thought, like, this doesn't feel like this would be like endorsed by Martin Luther King, with all the corporations.
What did he talk about?
Huh?
He was talking about corporations, and I mean, what was the?
Oh, I don't know. I have a video of it. I'd have to go back and look. But there were all these, corporate sponsors. And what's interesting is it's led by military. So like my learning about who Martin Luther King was toward the end of his life, he spoke out the civil rights, but then he adopted
Voting,
militarism. He spoke out against the war, and then the Poor People's Campaign. He started to address poverty.
Right. Economic instability.
And it's like those two pieces of it, the militarism and the poverty, have been like erased from his history. And I would talk to people who didn't even know about, like, people of color who didn't even know about the Poor People's Campaign. And I'm like, so I'm interested in how, like, his image and how other people's images are used by people who, like, politicians.
Commodified, yeah.
Yeah, yes. Do you have any thoughts on that, or is that something you've ever thought about?
I guess I can speak to that, and I'll start off with the shortest month in the year is designated to elevate, uplift, and target Black history. Let's just start with that, right? Black history does not pause for 11 months out of the year. So giving us 1 month to highlight it, which happens to be the shortest month in the year, is, it's insulting. But also trying to suggest that whenever they're elevating something that a person does that happens to be of color, that happens to be Black, they're going to go back and they try to keep us focused on all of the challenges that we see that Martin Luther King and other Black leaders like Malcolm have overcome. And I think that we have people that we should not be considering leaders or heroes that are doing the work. It's distracting, even when they talk about essential workers right now and they say how heroic they are. Nobody wants to die. Like today is Memorial Day. They made the ultimate sacrifice. They did not sacrifice themselves. I don't want to get off on a tangent, but it is important to look to your neighbor, to look to your mother, your sister, your brother, and the average person, and understand that they are trying to do their best. And when they push the Malcolms, the Martins, and the leaders from the past, it's almost like trying to get you to feel like you have to be that omnipotent in order to do something important and special, and that's not true. These people, as they were rising and doing good work, they weren't thinking that I'm going to be in a book someday, or I'm going to be on a stamp, or I'm going to be considered this famous leader. They just did it. And we have people regularly every day just doing it. As far as economic stability and or instability, voting, and this challenge to be the strongest military. These are issues that were uplifted and talked about back in the 60s, and specifically with Martin Luther King. And when I'm upset at the school district, and whenever somebody asks me, well, what is it if there was one thing that you could change with regard to public education? I say it's the curriculum, because we don't have a curriculum that addresses economic stability. The things that Martin Luther King actually stood for, the things that he talked about. There's far more money around the military, around this presence of dominance in the country. And it's not just about dominance in the country. Actually, it's about the private contracts that the people that fund the military and work in the military and support the efforts with these contracts. It's about the money. This is about the money with regard to the military. It is not about being the biggest country. The war crimes of Bush, the war crimes that we don't even deal with, come out of this attitude that we must be the strongest. And if you looked at any of the major fights, and you had the large person and you had the small person, the person that had the best strategy intellectually was not necessarily the person that was the largest. It was the person that was able to critically think about the response to whatever the action was going to be. So being the mightiest with the biggest machines is about capitalism. It is not about protecting this country. Martin Luther King would right now, and I'm sure is rolling over in his grave with the way he has been used, with the way the things that he has stood for and championed have been commodified. There's a price tag in this country by the few to take anything that is of importance that should be talked about in a certain way and to reintroduce it in a way that they can make money off of it, or to push their message and their motive out. It is not to share and to better understand why it's important to have true democracy with voting. It is not to understand and to support economic stability. I'm not a communist, but I don't think that's a bad thing. And I think that the way that this country deals with socialism, communism, deals with economic instability, deals with race, sexuality, I think that is horrible. I think Martin Luther King would not approve of it. I wish we had more time to even talk about, like, just reel back and talk about sexuality and masturbation and suicide and gender identity and all of those things. Those are the things that I think are the real conversations that we should be having right now. Certainly not who can quote what Martin Luther King said at a certain time during a certain speech. It's not about the one-liners. It is about the premise, the whole understanding of how to help your fellow person and how to see humanity from the lens that is inclusive of all of us.
I like how you relate everything to movies. That's why I connect too, because I'm a big movie guy too. So
yeah.
Storytelling, you can really say a lot of things through.
It used to be books, but after the late 40s, my eyesight changed. My mom, when we were younger, she would take us up the street, Broad Street, to the thrift store, and I was like astounded. I could get 10 books for $1. 10 books. Now the jacket would be ripped off, and my mom would sit on the couch and she would read. Like, she could just read like 3 books in a day. It was no big deal. And my daughter read 220 books over the summer for fun, one summer. Wow. And yeah, but now it is movies. But there was this movie that I saw, and I think the name of it is called Angel Has Fallen, Morgan Freeman, and I can't remember what the other star of it, the Secret Service agent that was the star. I can't remember what his name was, but they were trying to. This was all about military, the military contract for this private corporation that defeated whatever army they were after using drones, and so this particular Secret Service guy's friend, so-called friend, had talked to him about this contract that he was trying to get, and the president had absolutely been against privatizing the military even further, right? And so the president happened to be at this retreat for himself, a day of fishing, and out of nowhere, the guy who was one of the Secret Service agents was trying his best to hang in there, but he was really tired because he had just been at this mock fight or something where they were just doing this for game, and he was tired. So he radioed for them to come pick him up, and the other guy was going to take his place during this fishing trip. He was the Secret Service for the president. Long story short, he got off that boat just in time. They didn't know that he was going to be getting off the boat, and all these drones just came. And I mean, these little things were like the size of a cell phone, drones, and they were able to single out and identify who a person was just by looking at it. I think that if we're not careful, I want to really be wrong. we're going to see this country controlled by drones and drone-like mentality from private corporations that will now, because I believe that the bricks and mortar prisons are going to go away. I believe the bricks and mortar schools are going to go away. But I believe that what you're going to see as far as surveillance, in India right now, one of my nephews from my husband's side had talked about the color that he was, the zone and color that he was in. And they were allowed outside for 2 hours. You had to stay in your color zone, and you had to be back in within 2 hours.
And
now,
this
is somewhere in India. He was in university.
Was it a prison thing or a
No,
COVID thing?
It was a COVID thing. It was COVID. It was definitely
so say
COVID.
That again. Like...
My nephew, Alu, he is doing studies over in India, and we were talking, and we were comparing what was going on here in the States with what's happening over in India. And I remember there was a time where recently, and he was telling me that he had a color code assigned to him, red or yellow. I'm not sure anybody was green, and you had 2 hours to go out. You still had to stay within your color configuration. 2 hours to go out, and you had to be back within that time. And yeah, I was like, what? You are only allowed, see, there's that word again, allowed out for 2 hours, and you have to stay within your zone. We are headed towards that type of surveillance. We are headed for chips. Yeah, you're gonna have to just wait till this goes by. Like, yeah. But I believe that we are headed towards drones and surveillance and just giving away our civil liberties. We're headed in that direction right now. Like that, I'm sure there's legislation embedded somewhere that continuously gets slipped in that eases more of our civil rights on a regular basis in exchange for some type of economic help. What we saw with COVID, when they did the stimulus of $1,200, was people ready to like, oh, the government had us, they actually had us in place where, folks ran out and they were rushing to buy toilet paper. The shelves were cleared of bread and water. We saw this. We saw all of this. And as a result of that, it was like Pavlovian. It was like Pavlov's dog where, there was no bell being rung to make us salivate, but we were being conditioned to see how far they could go. And I do believe that this is just the beginning of it. That we're going to, whether it's 6 months or another year, we're going to get another virus or COVID-19 style situation with sheltering in place. And as this happens, it's the same thing that we saw with 9/11, where your civil liberties, for the sake of safety, the public safety and security, you will give away your rights. You're going to just sign them away. You're going to elect and allow people that are few to determine what the masses do. And they haven't been doing a good job, or we would already have universal health care. We would not have people sleeping in the streets, and we wouldn't have the pharmaceutical industry dictating what happens and doesn't happen, not just in our medicine, but in our food. In our food.
So they're doing that with your cell phone? Like they're tracking your cell phone?
Oh yeah, they're absolutely.
So what's to keep them from just leaving a cell phone at home?
What's to keep? I think there's going to be a chip. I think that this vaccination that's coming up, it's already mandatory in schools. You have to be vaccinated. I remember when I would take Lonnie and Kay, but this is when they were 17, and they would say, well, Miss Bah, we need you to leave the room so we can speak with Fulani. It was like, the hell if I'm leaving the room. I said, maybe when you have your kids, I'm telling the doctor this, maybe when you have your kids, you can leave the room and let somebody, because they have a degree in a white coat, tell your kid whatever they want to. Hell no. When Lonnie was Lonnie had brain surgery, and, she was going through a lot of trauma. And so, there was a social worker that was there. And they were like, we can come help and talk with her. I was like, okay. I said, but I'm gonna need to see whatever paperwork, I need to see this paperwork first that, would supply this service. And One of the questions said, do you ever feel sad, comma, and want to hurt yourself? What the fuck? I was just like, the period was after the comma with two statements that were questions. Who doesn't feel sad? So if you say yes, by the way, make sure that you see the movie Unsane. You'll totally understand why I know I'm down in somebody's file that this, oh God, Miss Bah, you know, when she comes in with her kids. Who asks a question to a teenager? My daughter's dealing with post-traumatic stress and bullying. What kid isn't? Do you ever feel sad, comma, and want to hurt yourself? What? So if you say no, you're lying, because who doesn't feel sad? If you say yes, then now they have cause to do what? I was like, no, we're not signing that and we don't want that help. And by the way, I need a copy of that. Like, you know, what the fuck? Are you kidding me? But we're, for the sake of help, my child is traumatized. My child just had brain surgery. My child has post-traumatic stress from being bullied in school. And I'm just like, oh my God. So in order for me to get help, I need to sign over my rights, and you will use your verbiage if I'm not cognizant to read through the minutia. That wasn't even minutia. That was just like, are you kidding me? But, and then you've got the commercial saying everything's a fast pace. You've got to move fast. You've got to do this. Slow down, say no, start off with no. And then read it and decide if you need to change it. But everything, nope. I write stop. I'm text all the time. Stop. You know, don't add me to the do not call list. Like a million and one things. And I'm on Google trying to find out about the coverings for the pull-ups. And then all of a sudden I get all of these like ads. I'm like, damn it, like everybody has access to me. How do they know that I was just looking at that? Or I'm on Pinterest looking at black oversized t-shirts or hair products, whatever it is. And then I get all of these ads in my email, and I get all of these ads popping up if I'm on YouTube. Your phone right now is being like watched. Your phone is definitely being listened to. You have no privacy. Something somewhere that you needed, you had to sign something and embed it somehow. It was interesting. When I worked for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, the Department of Homeland Security would investigate. There was 7 different lawyers, and our job was to take whatever the case was and send it to the Inspector General to see if they wanted to investigate in-house whatever the case was. And then if the Inspector General said no, then it would be an in-house using the 7 lawyers that were there. But it was interesting because there was some type of verbiage that if you use a collection of words, I can't remember what it was, it changed the whole dynamic for whether or not your case was taken serious as far as your case had to be investigated. It was like so it's almost like with regard to like voodoo and witchcraft and giving consent, if somebody says, will you allow me, or do you consent to such and such? Everything is in the details right now. Start off by saying no and then go from there. But everything is in how your agency can be monetized, how they can make money off of whatever it is that you need. And your individuality, your self-agency, your ability to dictate what happens next to you and your family, all of those things right now are for sale. All of them. Yeah.
And it's a weird thing because I go back to this trust thing that people believe that the government's there to help you, or that these corporations or these foundations or these nonprofits, and especially in a time when their fear is high, their guard is down, and so they're just trying to help people. Like is it your nephew? Did you say who was it in India?
Yeah, it's my nephew. Yeah.
So the idea is what we're we're saving people. We're saving people's lives, and
you're controlling people. That's what you know, because what if a person says, you know what, I feel that my immune system is solid and I want to go here. I want to go here. It is outside of the color zone. I don't have a fever. I don't feel sick at all. You have no control, no counsel over no counsel over yourself. We're already there. Who would ever think that you had to wear a mask to go into a bank? Like, you know what I mean?
Well, it's even more bizarre than that. Like, I see people walking by themselves, or like in their car by themselves wearing a mask, and I'm like, what? Like, the psychology of that is like, first of all, wearing a mask all the time is not healthy.
No.
I saw a guy just earlier this morning when I left the house. There was a guy like picking up doing rocks. He was like doing hard labor, like,
with a mask on.
He's wearing a mask. I'm like, God, this guy's gonna, this guy's gonna make himself pass out. He was like chipping up the sidewalk and putting these huge rocks in the truck, and he's wearing a fucking. I'm sorry.
No, please, I love it.
I'm a swear.
No, go for it. Yeah.
But like, this guy's wearing a mask, and I'm just like, I didn't say anything to him, but I'm just like, God, that's not good for you. Like,
my daughter was conditioned every time she got shortness of breath, she thought it was asthma and wanted to take a puff of the inhaler, and then and I kept telling her, I was like, Lon, I was like, but the doctor said, I was like, I don't give a fuck. Like, the doctor said, this person is not doing this out of love. They are paid, and with that pay comes conditions by the employer. And the employer says that this is the Western medicine that you have to use for this condition. And it's not necessarily a cure. It is like to suppress whatever that is. But now, even, they're taught in school that what do you want to be when you grow up? And so you say lawyer, doctor, this, that, and the other. My kids are told you want to be happy and healthy when you grow up. What you do for money is different. And that separation is really important, because you should not want to be something that you can be fired from. You should aspire to do good things and to do certain specific intentional things, and perhaps you earn money doing those things. But what you want to be is happy and healthy and a good person. And what does a good person look like? Well, it certainly isn't somebody that, will push something that they later on or suspect might not be good for somebody else, and do it so that they can make and earn money off of it.
I think you might have used the word agency earlier.
I did.
Okay. I actually love that word, because I think it really addresses something that's happening in our society and our culture, which is that our lives are more and more mediated by money and these impersonal things like technology, but it always comes back to money.
Always.
But you have a job, like, as you're a professional. And what does it mean to be a professional? You're supposed to leave your own personal views aside.
You paid to be a professional means that you paid X amount of dollars for somebody else's ideology and time and discipline, to now substantiate that you have the qualifications. So that came from somebody else. You did not have enough agency, if you will. You did not have enough qualifications, and your word is not enough to show that you understand something and can do something. You have to have somebody else, which is all capitalism, because you can't get it for free.
And you're supposed to sacrifice your own agency.
Yeah.
Within those positions.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I keep telling people. It's like, these people, even in the medical world, it's a very top-down system where, through funding mechanisms, people contort themselves, and you're going to lose your job. You're going to risk losing funding. There's a whole bunch of stuff that happens if you don't go with the status
quo. Your license will be suspended.
Right.
You'll be blackballed.
So people aren't allowed to operate on their own human agency of, like,
you should not think for yourself.
Right. I've thought about, there's a great book by a guy named Jeff Schmidt. He's a physicist, and the book is called Disciplined Minds, and it's all about salaried professionals and the training, through the training and then through the conditioning, through ideology. Just as you said, you remove yourself. If you're a journalist, you're not supposed to have an opinion about this whole thing.
Oh yeah, I see that every day with the news, and it's, you see somebody reporting on this horrible thing, and you don't see any emotion. It is void of emotion, and that is considered professional. That's like the irony of all of that, and what it does to us is what is the term that we use again when you become, it desensitizes us. In the black community, it's so funny because I remember hearing, like, for shit, we used to this. This ain't hard for us. We you know what this is like. There are things that you can't do because you're black. You better not do that. There's like, coming up in the 70s when I was in school, I knew not to go on certain sides of the city because of my skin color. Like, I was conditioned to know, oh, if you go over there, you're going to get your butt kicked, as if I was wrong to go over there because I knew that something bad that shouldn't have happened to me would happen. Think about that for a second. I should have every right to go where I can freely go that's not somebody's private property in the city. But if I go over there, my own community, well, you knew you wasn't supposed to go over there. You knew you shouldn't have done that. So you did this to yourself. You were blamed. Yeah, I'm smiling, but I'm not happy about that. When I think about it, it's just like...
Well, think of like, what were you wearing when you got raped, sort of?
Oh my God, right?
Mentality.
Right?
Yeah.
Victimizing, injuring the victim even more, and victimizing the victim. Gaslighting, yeah, that for sure. We were bussed out of the public schools that we could clearly walk to. So instead of bringing the resources into our community, we were bussed into predominantly white areas. And oh my God, I remember going into this school, and the one that we came from had one, the gym was the size of maybe my living room. When we went up into the white neighborhood, there were separate gyms for the boys and separate gyms for the girls. A separate, fully funded library, a lunchroom with hot food. Oh my God, I couldn't believe it. And a huge recess yard. And I learned Latin in elementary school, but there were like, it was just home ec. I was like, and I remember even like I think at the time it was like 7th grade. I remember saying, why don't we have this in our neighborhood? And it was like, I think it had more to do with real estate at the time, not education, but it had to deal with how to keep the real estate at a certain level by making sure that the public education buildings and system in those areas were poor, or the infrastructure was poor because the quality as far as the educators was the same. We had brilliant, wonderful teachers, but they were oppressed and stuffed. It's like either you work inside a closet and you're like suffocating and it's tight, or you work inside, with this huge outside yard and you've got all of this, to deal with and enjoy. And if you ask yourself, who's going to want to go to school to go work in a closet versus somebody that wants to go to school and be able to have this entire field to work outside of, who's going to feel oppressed. Who's going to like hesitate and see dread, associate something less than or bad, like gaslighting for real. Like all of those things happened to us, and we didn't even realize what was going on. We didn't. I used to read, my 6th grade teacher, it was a social studies class. He would have us get the Daily News and the Inquirer, and I'm trying to remember which one of those. It would be a robbery that took place, right? And one would say, a man robbed such and such, and the other one would say a black man. And I was like, but then if there was something else that happened and it was a white person, you never saw the description of color. You looked at both papers and you could see this clearly, something happened here, this paper reported on it, this paper reported on it, and I would say to myself, oh, I guess this was a white man then, because they didn't say black man, And it was just like those little nuances that even as a small child, you're learning and becoming conditioned around it. Our dolls in our stores, I remember like the little Barbie dolls, the black Barbie dolls did not have the smile and never showed the teeth. And then the white Barbie doll had the smile, had the teeth and lipstick, and You know, so clearly there was always this like.
There was I have tons of documentary films, but there was a young woman actually that made a film a while. It was actually a while ago. This was like in 2002 or 2001 or something. But she wanted to for her school project. She wanted to redo that test where they did they took the kids.
Oh, with the black doll.
The black doll and the white doll, and she redid that test, and the results were the same. We're like, which one's the good doll? Which one's the bad doll? But then they go into like this is stuff that I didn't know about, but like the trying to, skin bleaching and the hair straightening and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, lighter than a brown paper bag. When I speak to groups of students from different universities, it's a predominantly white room, and I'll go in and say I want to acknowledge my light skin privilege. Like, I'm trying to make sure that I'm hitting it from the door. I want you to know this about me, and I want you to like look at yourself and understand what might be there that you had nothing to do with. But you need to know it so that you understand the bias that you have. My light skin privilege. What does that mean if I'm going into a room with all black people? Well, what that means is if I'm the lightest person in the room, I have privilege over these other people that are not as light. Never gets talked about. Never. When does it get talked about? Or if my hand is up and it goes up after 3 other people. I remember at a job, 4 of us were hired. It may have been 3. I think 3 or 4 of us was hired. And I was saying to myself, God, they got a lot of people at this front desk. It was really interesting. And after 90 days, I think all 4 of us were really awesome, right? After 90 days, I knew I had the job and one other person had the job. And I remember like saying to myself, God, she was good. I don't know why she didn't get the job. I don't know why they didn't keep her. It wasn't until years later and I thought about it and I was like, oh, she was dark skinned. She was dark skinned. She was darker than me. That's why they didn't keep her. And I wondered, did they know that? Because she was just as good.
A lot of it's probably not even conscious. It's just like you don't even think about it, riding a bike or something.
Yeah. I don't think that, and it's not limited to just color. It's height as well. I mean, we know that. Yeah, right. But like I talk about, I don't know what I know is that I can't not say it. I can't not talk about it. And same with incest and molestation, and I believe that just like now, after they've imprisoned all of our men, as many men as they could, and women, and now marijuana's legal. Like, what the fuck? I'm still angry. I'm enraged.
I can buy pot as easily as I can buy a Slurpee. It's crazy.
But there are people.
But there are people.
3 strikes, you're out.
Someone just died.
Clinton.
Someone just died in prison that I just read about that was there for a marijuana charge.
Like, are you kidding me?
It's crazy. Go ahead.
No, molestation. Like, these are diseases. Somebody that's been molested probably was molested by somebody that was molested. So your answer to this is to put this person behind bars. Where's the restorative justice there? How are you helping? How are you fixing? Where's the transformation? When do you address what happened to this person that would make them do this? Like, what? Why is that not a discussion?
Yeah, I mean, prisons are. I mean, I'm with like
wealth. It's all about wealth. It's commodifying.
But yeah, I'm an abolitionist when it comes to prisons. I think the only people that should be in prison are like violent people who are a threat to society. I don't believe in punishment. I believe in, like you said, the idea that
restorative.
I came from a different, like when I was younger, I was like pro death penalty. These people are bad and we need to get them. So I understand that mindset. When I was in high school and like I was kind of like in that belief, and it was in 2000. Actually, I believe I was supportive of the death penalty up until about 2000, maybe 2 or maybe 3. I can't remember, but you might remember this. But the governor of Illinois, Ryan, he was a Republican who supported the death penalty all along, and then right before he's retired, he commuted all the death penalties in Illinois. This was in like 2003, I think, somewhere around there. And I just happened to be watching CNN when he gave this speech, and I was like in tears, because it was a redemptive thing for him. He was just standing up there saying, I was wrong. I have promoted this my whole life, and I realized that this is not about justice, this is about revenge. And then he went in, he gave this like hour-long speech, and he went in, he talked about the innocent people that get caught up in there, but even of the guilty people, it's
guilty
not
of what, right?
It's not restored. It doesn't fix anything,
right?
And he's like, this is about revenge. And it was like, from that moment on, I changed my view on that, and now I'm like, and now I'm even further along. Now I'm a total out. I don't believe prisons should. I do think there are people that, and we don't. I do think there are people that have. Usually it's a mental health thing or whatever, that have violent things that do need to be, and not for punishment, but just for the protection of society. But very, probably less than 1% of the people in prison should even be there.
I said during my campaign, I said that I would like to see police officers become community concierges. And the incumbent left right after she spoke, and she wouldn't debate me. And I was talking about, somebody had asked me what did I think about incarceration and policing, and and it's so interesting, because when I was coming up, this is high school, I became a law enforcement explorer, and because I thought that doing right was like protecting people, but I didn't understand, what are you protecting them from, and even deeper than that, why do you need to protect that? Like, why is that not something that everybody has, right? But during the campaign, when finally asked about criminal justice and confinement and policing, and I said, I believe that police should be turned into community concierges, and that if you don't have a gun, you will think about what else you're supposed to do. But you're not supposed to kill somebody. You're not supposed to you're taking away their life, or you're maiming them in some way for something that somebody else legislated as a crime. And during that time when we were speaking and those questions were coming, it was the one time during the campaign when I was just like, oh, this is not about winning a seat. This is about helping people that may have the same or similar thoughts, feel empowered to say them out loud. That's what it, and for that moment, it was like, it was worth all the trauma that a campaign could possibly put you in. We're so conditioned, and we have got to, when I'm saying conditioned, it is, if you want somebody to do something, you want to ask them to do it about 7 times over and over again. That's that boyfriend I was telling you about that redid my steps in the yellow car, Butch. But you have to ask them, like, it has to become, it's just like the detergent Tide. You see it all the time, so therefore you see it more, it becomes familiar. And so that's more likable, because it's more familiar, because you see it more often. And that's a trick. I remember saying I should have went into marketing and advertising, so I could have figured out how to trick, how to promote, trick, and design the things that are most important in a way that people could comprehend and absorb it better, But much too often we find these things out so late in life, that this has all been conditioning by somebody else's doing. And all for money, all for money. I think this all goes back to money.
Yeah.
You have to follow the money. If you want to know why something is happening, find out how it's being financed. Find out how somebody is benefiting financially from it.
Well, earlier you said those people in power in reference to politicians. And so going back to what's the root, what's behind the curtain, where does the power really lie? And the question is, the way I look at politicians is the same way I would look at a manager. They're there to do a job, but they work for somebody else. And so I'm always like, who do they work? Let's go after who they work for, and go after who they work for. It's like follow it up. We're sitting here. There's so many levels to it. We're gonna fight the cops. The cops are pawns. Okay, who's above them? Like, who's above them? And so that's kind of what I'm interested in. Like, going to the source. There was a. Okay.
Yeah, you coming in? Okay.
Oh, you just want to watch. So there's a story about, there's a guy walking upstream, and he looks over at the river, and he sees a baby floating down the river, and he's like, oh my gosh, there's a baby in the river. I got to jump and pull this baby out of the river. And then he pulls the baby out of the river, and he sees another one. He's like, oh no, I got to grab another one. And he jumps and grabs this other baby. And then other people start showing up, and they're like, we got to get these babies out of the river. And so people are pulling the babies out of the river. And then at one point, the guy stops and puts his backpack back on and starts walking away. And he's like, hey, where are you going? We got to, he goes, you guys stay there and keep doing that. I'm going to go upstream and see who's throwing these babies in the river. And that's kind of the mindset that we need to get into. We need to start, we're always dealing with the problem. We're always dealing with downstream from the problem. And there's not enough people like going upstream going, okay, where's this coming from? Like,
but why do you think we do that? Like, think about that for a second. Why do you think we do that? Why do you think?
I think we're conditioned to it, and I actually think when I got into the whole nonprofit, looking at the nonprofit thing, they want to focus our attention here,
right.
And they're like, we're going to create an activist, we're going to be activists, and we're going to fight it at this level,
right.
And it's like, even the political parties, the Democratic Party kind of plays a role in
distraction,
managing dissent, and preventing us from like getting at the root of it.
It's 3-card Monty.
Oh.
It is. Whenever people talk about Trump, I get annoyed. I'm like, you're talking about an entertainer who was, propped it up to stand right there and read this. And then the real worker is, the mastermind is behind the scenes giving you this person to focus on. And I'm saying, think about it. There's far more people in the Senate, in Congress, in the House, all of these other entities, doing the bidding of few, but Trump is not, he's not the one that's created. So what we're doing when we say, oh, we gotta get Trump out of office. One of the things that Bernie Sanders was famous for was igniting us to, I became a home and school president. I mean, like little stuff. I was never, like, I wouldn't even go to a home and school meeting unless they had a good breakfast. Like, come on, But it was like, okay, we got to start dismantling these layers while we're looking at what's happening. You don't always have to know who the wizard is behind the curtain, right? But you do need to understand what that wizard's goal is. You need to, and that's what Allison does. That's one of the things. But there's all of us are Allison. All of us are Allison. You don't have to tell people what you're doing, though. You want pushback? Tell them that you're considering doing that. You're going to get pushback. You're going to have everybody in the world. I remember my great aunt telling me, I worked at the Adams Mark Hotel. No, it was before the Adams Mark Hotel. I was working at General Accident Insurance Company. I was an accounting clerk. And she was like, and I told her, I was like, I'm bored. I don't want to do this anymore. I had maxed out the 401k, whatever. I was doing pretty good. And I was like, I think I want to work in hotels because I want to deal with people. And she was like, you need stability, this, that, and the other, And I was like, nah, I'm quitting. And I did. And I started working in hotels. The best thing. I met my husband that way. Oh my God, And it never felt like a day of work. It never felt like a day of work. But what I realized and what I learned out of that, here's the point. Don't tell people what you're going to do. Just do it. And you don't have to tell everybody what you're thinking, but share and listen. And when somebody is like on the fringe of sharing something around what we know to be certain, help them, support them, encourage them, and like let them kind of like come in on their own. Lonnie's gonna make a bunch of mistakes. I tell her all the time, that mommy wakes up, I'm gonna make a whole bunch of mistakes because I'm gonna try to do something. Because I'm gonna try. And when she was younger, she was like, oh, I spilled milk. That's no big deal. Like she at one time was just like, okay, wait a minute. I didn't let you go too far. It's like, you need to clean that up, damn it. But it's just like, I wanted to encourage so much.
Yeah, You'd be like, whatever.
Yeah, it's just milk. Yeah, just going to sour.
I broke the TV again.
I know. Like, no, really, she was going down that lane. She was really going down
funny.
there. It is. God.
You know, I was thinking about, another one of my interests is language and how language shapes the way that we think. There's a woman by the name of, what is her name? Lenny Liraborditsky. She's a linguist. But she gave this talk about like how our language like puts blame on you. So she was saying like, okay, so if you had a glass and I accidentally knocked the glass off the table. In English, if you had said, who knocked the glass off the table? They would be like, Jason knocked the glass off the table. But the way you say it in Spanish depends on whether or not the glass was knocked off the table intentionally or accidentally.
Wow.
So if I intentionally knocked the glass off the table, they would say Jason knocked the glass off the table. But if it was an accident, the way it actually translates is the glass knocked itself off the table. Like, and that's actually, but it's what's interesting is it changes the way you think about things.
Yeah.
And it like we're all about placing blame and beat yourself up on this. The religious thing.
Responsibility.
When you're a baby, you're a sinner. You know, it's like this. There's a
like what the fuck?
There's a mindset that's wrapped around that.
Yeah,
it's kind of interesting.
It really is, and I didn't know that about language. Latin, we would. I remember just like the little nuances, and I was so excited about that. I loved Spanish just because of how it sounded. But it would be nice to know that there's another power source that would enlighten us as to what we're doing, how we sabotage ourselves. I'm excited though. I'm excited. I am the eternal optimist. And I'm not sure exactly why that is and how that comes about. Probably because I had some really awesome parents. My parents were 15 and 17 when they had us. Black and white, African American and Italian, both from Philadelphia, very poor. My dad had to put newspapers in his shoes to keep his feet off the ground, and yet he was the state mile king for Pennsylvania.
The what?
The state mile king. He ran the mile the fastest.
Okay.
For the state, and this is somebody who was poor and had to run with like newspapers to keep his feet from touching the ground. And him and my mom was 15 when she had my sister. They had us, and thank God they were young, and they were like just great people, wonderful people. He worked for the post office. She was a correctional officer, and it was really interesting because she was that later on in life. She had taken a test much earlier, and they had hired men that had scored lower. So I guess there was some law case or something, lawsuit. And my sister, so my mom was like in her 40s when they contacted her, and they was like, you get all of this back time, you get seniority, come work, you pass the test, and this is your right now if you want to take this job. She worked at Holmesburg, CFCF, PIC, Gradersford. These are all the prisons, And I remember saying, why aren't you scared, at work? And she was just like, I see you, your brother, and your sister in there. That's what I see when I go to work. Any of y'all could be in there. And it was just like, whoa, And they wanted her to apply for a sergeant or some type of rank. And she was like, nah, I'm protected by not going higher. The inmates, people that are there, they look out for me. They take care of me. They're not going to hurt me because they understand that I understand.
That's what's interesting too about the whole discipline professional thing. Like I'm pretty much broke. Here's the thing about it is like because I'm not in a professional position, if I get a job with some organization, or even like my friend was just a DJ on public radio, and playing music, and then on his private Facebook, they were coming down on him about political stuff he was posting on his private Facebook. So it's like there's pressure that goes on you when you're like in some ways not having not being in a position, not having a career, not being beholden to that. There's a freedom about it that allows like Allison, if she were at a university or whatever level, she might not be able to get away with all the stuff that she says, so there's like a freedom involved with not keeping your head down.
You think you would think there is, but there's the cancel culture and activism and the organizing as well, and they have gone after Allison. Allison has spoken out way too much. Oh my goodness, like how dare she? This cancel culture, if you've ever done anything, like you better be lily white perfectionists and never have done anything. When my mom was really proud that I had been, a high school graduate. I had an athletic scholarship to Temple, but dropped out and came back and helped out here. And my mom was really proud when I was in D.C. and I got offered a job to work for the Senate. Now, I was a Democrat, but I was the office manager in it was the Senate Republican Conference. It didn't matter what my political position was. My job was as an office manager, managing $1.3 million and a staff of, I think it was like total maybe 9 to 11. And that was a sense of pride for her, because it was in a higher office, right? But when I ran for office, even though I was a Bernie-crat, even though I've always been a Democrat and, never registered as anything else, that was used by Democrats against me. You worked for Santorum? I was like, no, I worked as an office manager to, and if you want to know who my real bosses were, rules and ethics, because I would always call to find out, hey, am I doing this right? At the time, I had no idea who Santorum was and what he stood for, because I was just trying to keep food on the table and keep my bills paid. And I had a chance to be an office manager. But this cancel culture is what I'm getting to. Like whatever or whoever you may have been affiliated with, associated with, and if you've ever said anything out of your mouth, I say fuck all the time. I try not to curse in sanctuaries, but I might let one rip in church. Pass that plate around, I'll take my electric bill out of it, But this culture of this, and I can't stand social media. I can't stand it, a selfie. Oh my God, like really? Are you serious? You see I got black on. It's incredible what we're allowing to take hold and be the predictors and to determine who gets to eat, who gets to do and say and be in charge. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I've had people come down really hard on me about the COVID thing because I've been pushing back on the narrative, and all of a sudden I don't care about people that are getting sick. And I'm like, I do. I just think I want this other piece of it to be included in the conversation.
Yeah, they weaponized this.
I'm not excluding what you're saying, your concerns. You, in fact, are excluding my concerns about privacy and surveillance and like this, what's going on with, And it's even just today, someone did the whole thing of like, well, we've been fighting for black people and you're fighting for white people that want to get a haircut. I'm like, that has nothing to do with that. Where did that even come from? Like, this is someone I know. I mean, it hurts. It like hurts me.
Yeah.
I've spent my whole life fighting for human rights, in my own little media way, but it's the cancel culture is real, and I've lost friends over this, but I'm scared about the system that's being put in place, which, by the way, will predominantly hurt poor black and brown people and other people as well. But it's like, it's vicious.
You know how vicious? Jason, I was on Match.com. And my friends, she was actually doing her fundraising, and my daughter and two of my friends were in there. And I'm looking at this, I'm flipping through and I'm looking at this guy. I was like, oh, look at this guy, and I'm reading through his stuff. And they're looking at one of the pictures. And in the picture is is a white guy. He's standing there, and there's a white girl. And the girl has braids in her hair. And they're like, oh my God, do you not see that? Cultural, I forget what they called it.
Appropriation.
Yes, and I was like, the fuck? She had, I don't care that she has cornrows. They look good, of course. But it was like, no, you don't understand. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I needed to be angry with her for fucking wearing her hair that way.
Right.
Sorry,
Well, there's another story that I saw with a young girl with dreadlocks, but the girl's like 15 years old. And like, I don't know, it looked kind of tacky anyways, like, but whatever, it's her hair. But, but people were like, lashing out on her like you wouldn't believe. And I was like, hey, you guys, remember, this is like a 15-year-old kid, like, before you like...
Wow.
Before y'all freak out, maybe it's,
No, but they're not wrong, right? But they want to find her fault, but they're not. Where's your humanity?
Right.
Where's your humanity? You're going to lash out at a kid? Like, oh my God. But it happens. It is amazing. And I'm just like, I want no parts of it. So I took myself off of social media because I was like, you can't come for me privately within the safety of wherever you are at a distance. Pick your phone up or come see me. You got an issue. Right. You want to talk? We can talk.
Well, and with me, it's not even that people have an issue with it as much as how it's addressed. Because I think these conversations need to happen, right? Like the Rachel Dozier, what was her name? Rachel Dozier. She was the white. She was a white girl that like claimed that she was black, but she was,
yeah.
But she was running all these organizations. Like there's room for criticism there.
Okay.
But I also think that the legitimate issue becomes weaponized and it turns into something else, rather than like, hey, let's have a national conversation about this issue. That's grounded in compassion.
Because they want to build momentum and collective. There's collective disgrace and. We have to do this collectively, and it's like you're bullying. Do you not realize that that's a form of bullying too? What you're doing, and it's just like I'm sorry. Did you never take a pen from work? Did you, like come on?
But it's like let's have that conversation, but let's have it in a different way.
Right.
That's not of like, oh, there's a bad guy. Like you label, you got to ostracize this person. You're out. We're gonna stop the conversation. We need to silence this person, shut down their...
Think about sports though. We're taught that with sports. We're taught that somebody has to lose. Instead of the joy of doing this for fun, there's gotta be somebody's gotta be defeated. Somebody's gotta win and somebody's gotta lose. We're taught that from the beginning. Like all of that is conditioning. All of it. Yeah. Again, go to the bathroom just like everybody else. And I think I want everybody else to be able to feel comfortable. They may not get an opportunity to talk on film, but, and be taped. But all of us, we're waking up. We're figuring some things out. And we don't have to tell everybody everything that we realize, but we need to tell somebody.
Yeah. Well, another thing I think about, too, doing this type of work is like, I always love meeting someone like you who like is really smart, articulate, has the experience to do it. But there's also a lot of people out there that don't have the the confidence. They have experience and they have wisdom and they have knowledge to share, but they don't know how to articulate it, and they don't have like I just interviewed a guy a couple of days ago, and he was just like, it was really hard to get stuff out of him, but I know he has thoughts. I know it's in there. I just, you know what I mean? Like, but it's a conditioning thing. I think people are conditioned not to speak their mind. And then they're constantly weighing like, oh, is this gonna come back and haunt me or whatever, like.
You think I think about that too. I imagine that some of the things that I've said, like just doing this fingerprints with the census and looking at their privacy statement, I'm like, how are my fingerprints possibly going to be used to harm me? Like the fact that I have to have that type of jadedness that the government will come after me that way, but why wouldn't they? When I say the government, I mean more than just elected officials, and I should be conscious of that fact, but at the same time, I should also not stop saying and doing whatever it is that I believe at some point may benefit Kaba and Fulani. Because I'm going to always like be really specific and intentional that I've got these two people that didn't ask to be here. And I have a responsibility to that. In my mind, soul, and body, I know that I'm not going to be here long enough to protect them. And so what else can I do to make sure that things are a little bit better for them? Everything that I can. And that starts with just having conversations. I taped up the applications. People, they might see you sweeping the street. They may see you passing out voter application, paper application for the ballots. Whatever way you can do something, do it. And be unapologetic about it. Like, I'm not interested in being, the norm and just like everybody else. just not important anymore.
One last subject before I think about, I see a sense of community here in Philly than I see more than I see so in Denver, because Denver is more like spread out, and like these the neighborhoods were built like the suburban neighborhoods were like, like I'll never even, like I live where I live, like I won't even see my neighbors. Like, you have neighbors that live there for years that you like never see because they pull in the garage and
Oh yeah.
And the importance of community, like, to be able to like put roots down, like this is a house
Right.
that you grew up in.
Yeah.
Like, and that's becoming more and more rare
Right.
in this day and age. And now the atomization of humanity, putting everybody in these little pods and like with geofencing and that sort of thing. But the importance like of community in actually organizing, how vital community is to organize. And I remember I had a friend call me, like she was like in tears. She was like, I keep having to move because of economics. The rent goes up, I gotta move. The rent goes up, I gotta move. And this people are constantly moving around, and like the UN has a term called internally displaced persons, IDPs.
Wow.
Or people in other countries, like there's a war.
Used to be nomads, but
yeah. Well, no, it's usually it's like people that like there's a war and then people have to flee, and then they have to come. The idea is eventually that you want them to come back. But I think about like, and I know how it is here in Denver, but like, or in Philly, but like how like people can't like tradition that like they used to be able to like have a community where you know your neighbors for years and
Right.
years and years. You know your neighbors, but now with everybody having to move around, you can never set down roots. And it's all economic.
Mm-hmm.
You have a neighborhood that gets gentrified, so everybody has to move out, and then that gets gentrified, everybody has to move out, and so people are constantly being dispersed.
destabilized.
And they can never like build a community that they need to organize.
But they did that with the schools first. They made sure that you couldn't your kid could no longer just walk to the school across the street. First they did zones to say you had to be in this zone, right? Again, conditioning, controlling. And then they went the next step. When I say they, I'm talking about Dr. Height. And not Dr. Height, because nobody says, well, blame it on the superintendent. But the mayor is the one that can fire the superintendent. Yeah, so that's interesting. We never talk about the mayor is the reason. The mayor's over the school board. The mayor can fire and hire the superintendent. So always follow, right? They destabilized us in the beginning with the school, using the schools, because you couldn't just go to your neighborhood school anymore. And that was interesting. But automation, privatization, we're going to have to use privatization to come up out of this economic challenge that we're in. If anybody is looking to see how do we restore in any way what we just dismantled, which to a degree it's a good thing it was dismantled or shaken up so that we could now observe it a little bit as it tries to readjust itself. But privatization is going to be definitely utilized by the government to suggest we don't have enough money to do this on our own. We do need the help. When you look at how privatization is corrupted and horrible, you don't have to look far. Look at Katrina. Look at New Orleans. Look at the school system there. Look at what privatization did. I mean, you can do that here in Philadelphia when you're looking over at like Worcester Elementary that was turned into a charter school. But it wasn't just what happens when they say, well, what is the difference between a charter school and a public school? Charter schools don't have the same transparency and accountability as public school, but it does get the same tax dollars. So that's the difference if you want to understand privatization and the problem with it. And I do think that as we see more and more privatization, more and more automation, you see less transparency and less accountability. So it's hard to find who to blame, who to point the finger to try to stop whatever it is that's going on. And that's part of what we have to talk more about. How do we do that? How do we actually concisely understand where this is coming from? If somebody's bleeding and they're on the table and there's surgery, they want to find out what is it that's actually cut and harmed. so that we can stop the bleeding. You got to actually be able to find out where that's coming from so you can stop it. You see all this blood all over the body, but obviously it's coming from one area. That's where we are right now. That's what Allison has been trying to do. That's what people like you, Jason, that take the time to actually talk and let us think about what our thoughts and what our conditions and what our beliefs are.
What about the relationship between so I work with Sherry Honkala a lot, and she is on the front lines. People being thrown out of their homes right now.
Right.
They need a home right now. They need groceries today. They need some medical help today.
Right.
And so she's in the short term, right? And the relationship between that the dealing with the stop the bleeding sort of thing, versus figure out what the systemic, larger, bigger picture. So like, I'm kind of more of a bigger picture type person, and Allison seems to be like kind of like trying to step back and take a bird's eye view of some of this stuff. And it seems like there's a conflict between a lot of times, having to stop the bleeding in the initial, the what's right in front of your face, versus like some sort of long-term trajectory.
There is a conflict. We use that when we're talking about the abatement, the tax abatements. Like whenever there's like an alliance, like Our City, Our Schools is a grouping of coalition of unions, community members, educators, parents, students. And one of the main projects that we're on is tax abatements, which we talked about earlier with regard to opportunity zones. But the tax abatements, and one, Aileen Callahan talked about it. She broke it down beautifully. And I'm saying if the tree is on fire, but you want us to deal with the roots that are like in the ground that are like breaking up the pavement, and that's a bigger situation. But the tree is on fire. We need to put the fire out. Black people are the leaves and the branches on the tree. And we're on fire. And white folks are telling us, okay, we got to talk about those roots breaking up all the pavement, and why we can't plant and have homes and stability and this, that, and the other. It's a bigger problem, but right now we're on fire. We're on fire, and it's keeping us from being able to meet with you, to join you about the bigger problem of the roots and the tree expanding and taking over everything because we're on fire. Help us put this fire out, so that we can join you on looking at the problem with the roots of the tree. No, that's cool.
All right. So go ahead. You were just.
We were using the analogy of the tree and the leaves being on fire as the black folks, trying to just survive and be okay. When you had white folks that were less on fire, and saying, the roots of this tree are breaking up the ground and it's destabilizing everything. And, if you really want to deal with the problem, we got to deal with these roots here, right? And the black people are saying, yeah, but we're on fire right now. The leaves are burning. And the question was, can you deal with both of the situations? I do believe you can deal with both of the situations, but oppression keeps you from believing that you can. Oppression, it's like tunnel vision. And you're dealing with the most immediate thing, the trauma, what's traumatic, and you want to stop that. And you don't realize that you're stopping that temporarily because you might put that fire out, but there's still something bigger that's going on underneath. I as organizers and activists, I guess when we come up with the solution to that, then we'll be okay. I don't have it. But I'm not afraid to say that I don't have it and keep looking for it and to keep making a bunch of mistakes as we try to figure it out. We protested. The mayor was trying to go into a meeting with the Department of Commerce? I'm trying to remember. I think it was. And Allison called. She was telling me she was organizing this. And a couple of us went down there to, protest with her. And then at some point we were holding the banner and we were like, we're not letting them get in. And so the police were called. And, I was standing there, I was like, I'm not putting this banner down. You know, now this clearly was not like a situation where a kid had committed suicide. This was like, how dare you have a meeting with, I'm trying to remember who it was with, but it was, and not a parent was invited. It's like, how dare you have a meeting? You're our mayor. You work for us, you know, motherfucker. And you're not getting through. We're not moving. Police called and everything. I was like, I'm not moving. I can hold this sign up, you know. And Allison's got the other end of the sign. All of a sudden the sign just, and we're talking with the police officer. She's like, look, I don't want to arrest you. I was like, well, you got a kid in public school? Do you not understand why we're here? We're not part of this meeting, which means we're not at the table. We're the meal. Like, damn it. Do you know, work with me here. I'm not harming anybody. I'm trying to stop the harm that happens to us on a regular basis, right? All of a sudden the sign drops. I'm like, what the fuck? Allison then dropped the sign and laid in the street, lay her body down like, fuck this, I'm not moving. And now I'm not holding the sign, I'm laying down. Drive over my body, motherfucker. Just like, and I was like, God damn. And I said, now she's a white woman. They're going to say this white woman of privilege, you know, and they're going to arrest her ass and drag her. I was like, so you got to drop this sign and lay your black ass down there too, because it's going to look real bad if they do that to you. Right now, Jim Kennedy, you know, everybody's trying to make sure that they are not violating the rights of people of color, you know. I was like, fuck. So I laid down next to her. And eventually, the police were going to drag us and, you know, and arrest us. Maybe they weren't going to drag us, I don't know. But the whoever was in charge of the school down Girard Avenue was like, please get up, because it was after that woman had been killed in West Virginia when they drove into the crowd.
Oh, yeah.
Right, it was shortly after that. She's like, please get up. You can hold the banner. You can block the mayor. I will not. I'll tell the police to leave. Please just get up in the street. You can't lay here. I'm like, no, we didn't lay here now, you know. So eventually we agreed to get up and just hold the banner. Well, once we were done, I'm driving in my car by myself, and I'm driving. Do you know what came to my mind? I was like, fuck, my dad would have killed me if I'd have got arrested. Oh my God. And you know what I was thinking? I was like, and Heifer, what is wrong with you? You are a single black woman, widow with 2 kids of special needs. You don't have money for a lawyer? Your black ass go to jail and DHS might take your kids. This has always been my fear. And so it was just like understanding the dynamic, because Allison was like, Tonya, I didn't want you to do that. You know, I got a husband. We got, you know, if she goes to jail, he's going to bail her out. They can get an attorney. Just like, and I'm driving away saying first of all, the number one thing was like, my dad will kill me if I get arrested, you know, because my dad, I'm raised up, I'm still his daughter. I'm still his little girl, you know, and he would have been disappointed. So, you know, there's that, like, but it was like, what the fuck? I'm fighting for something that's important. I've got these kids, you know, all kids and my kids. But it was just like, when you quantify, hey Carl, when you quantify all of the things, the ripple effect of what happens when I get arrested, you know, then they have won, because there's all of those, they built all of these tiers of, you got this problem and this problem. I can't, so all my bills that I may have been up to date with, I have to worry about, I'm gonna have to pay for a lawyer. I'm gonna be challenged with if I'm a fit parent or not. I got these kids, like, you know, all of these, so it's just like, you wanna fight and you wanna push back, but you have to also be honest. You have to be honest with what your challenge is. And I'm just like, damn. And when I got home, I thought about that. I was like, the first thing I'm thinking about is disappointing my dad. What the fuck, you know? The second thing was, like, if I'd have got arrested, I wouldn't have been able to afford a lawyer, you know?
Well, that's what's crazy about all the stuff that's being put in place right now. Is like they're going to have more things to hold over people.
Yeah, I park somewhere, you give me a ticket, you know I can't afford this ticket.
Right.
So then the tickets pile up and you take my car, you know I need my car for work. Like, so then I don't have a way to get to work, and now I can't have a job. How do I feed my family? Fucking SEPTA. Key cards? Seriously? Key cards. And when they don't work, You hopped the stall. Now you're going to jail for that. Like, when did you? And it's just like, oh my God. And it goes on and on. When SEPTA first put their key cards up there, I just stood up there with my phone, taping all the people whose car would not work.
So they don't have where you can just buy a coin? They don't do coins or anything?
No more tokens. So I had, at the time, they were just now gently taking the token away, but they still had it there. I had a pocket full of tokens. I did give a couple people, like, eventually once, and that was fucked up because I waited until they were like fucking frustrated. I was like, here, just use this token. But it was just like, fuck.
Are the key cards connected to your name?
Oh, yes, you're supposed to, that's if it stops working or if you lose it. If you did not connect it, if you did not go online and register this key card, then you're ass out. And if you did, then everywhere you go is tracked. Tracking again. Your phone is tracked. My phone is tracked. Like, I use this metal wallet for all of my stuff. I've been online to look to see how to like keep this from being on, and how I always turn off my locator. But I was like, face recognition. I used to watch, what was the name? Person of Interest. I was like, I wanted to see if there was a way that I could buy something now that could alter them from being able to recognize my face. I want that. I would like that. I'd like to be able to afford to buy a few of them and give them to all my activist friends.
Just gonna walk around with a flat bag on.
Like an umbrella in the sun. How are you gonna get past the umbrella? Like, maybe umbrellas.
Well, at the end of the day, it's just like none of this stuff should be able to happen.
Right, exactly. Like here is your agency for safety. 9/11. I mean, I read this book. This is before 9/11. It was, what was the name of that book? Eagle's Eye. I think it was called Eagle's Eye. Something like that. And it talked about how this country was perceived, because I had been out the country, Senegal and West Africa, and then the usual spots like Mexico. And anyway, how this country was perceived, until I had read this book, I had no idea people had such hatred for this country. And why? And what a bully this country is seen as. And I was like, damn, I go abroad, people fucking hate me because I'm American. And I'm American because of where I was actually born. It was geography. It wasn't like, that I said, oh, I'm going to, my parents, I want her to be American. Sure, some people do want their kids to grow up as Americans. And my brother-in-law, I remember when he first came here, he was like, I really want to come here. And I was like, no, you don't. But in West Africa, in the Gambia where he was, the president was lying, saying he had a cure for AIDS. He was killing people, saying that drink this stuff and it's going to cure AIDS. And they ran a car, the military killed these kids for protesting. Well, just walking down the street, kids drove right in and killed them. I was like, I know it's bad over there. Like, I get it. And your president is crazy. Like, he'll just imprison you. But it's bad here too, But it's just like, oh my God. Oh my God. Like, so fight where you stand. Fight where you stand is crazy. Like, it's crazy. How do we get out of this? How do we like introduce and then destroy what we have? What we have, what is it, where is it all from? Like, you look back and I mean, if we're really going to be honest, I remember saying, if I have to do X, Y, and Z in order to go to heaven, which I don't even know is really there, then I'm good with it. This is my heaven and hell right here. Right here. Like, if there is nothing else, then I won't have been fooled. And if there is something else and I needed to do all of this in order to be there, I don't know that I want to be there. If this is right now, I need to act like this is my heaven and hell right now in order to make sure that this is okay for my kids. And you can't dangle in front of me streets of gold and I shall wear a crown and all of the other things, in order for me to just be the good little Christian when things are so fucked up. Like, that's not easy to say. I mean, I was conditioned. I was brought up in, piano and singing and putting on a robe and marching in and wearing white on Sunday and, all of the things that were associated with being a good person. How did that make me more good or less good than the next person that didn't do any of those things because they were raised across the world, And God is omnipotent. Doesn't he see my good? Doesn't he know how I feel in my heart?
What was the first thing that made you question, like what you were being told, like even as a kid or growing up or even as an adult, maybe it was as an adult?
I was
like
as a kid.
Where you're like, wait a minute, things aren't the way that they're presenting it.
We would have to go to church and be in there for a few hours because my grandma played the piano, and my mom wouldn't go. My mom and dad, they were married, they didn't have to go, but we had to go. It was 5 of us, and if you talked, she was the pianist, and she was the directress for the choir, and she managed she would be say the choir log was where those bushes are, but she could hear us. We were fucking little kids, and she could hear us talking, and you got your ass beat. You got spanked for talking in church. And I remember one day I didn't want to go to church to begin with. I wanted to go be home playing, right? And I went, and I had to go to the bathroom, and I didn't make it to the bathroom. And I peed on myself, and I'm like, ooh, well, at least now I get to go home. I got home, got my ass beat, had my clothes changed, and had to come back to church. Fucking sit there. And I said to myself, and that was really young, something's wrong with this. Something's wrong with this. God is good, right? Why would he want me to have to feel like this? Why would I have to go through this in order to be with somebody good? And then if he's so wonderful good and heaven is so great, why don't I just die now? Why should I wait? Oh my God. If it's great, why not experience it sooner?
But it's a lack of human agency, because any human being in their heart would be like, oh, this is the right thing to do. I'm going to look at you as a person and know how this is going to affect you. But instead, you're removing your parents or whoever is removing your grandparents, remove their agency, and they're like, oh, well, this is what tradition is what I was taught.
Tradition,
this is the
tradition.
Rule.
I hate tradition.
A rule.
Yeah, I hate tradition. Look, my hair is bald. I'm bald. I'm bald. That's fucking trust me. In the beginning it's oh my God, you cut your hair off. Yeah.
I think you wear it great.
Well, thank you. That's my nephew.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing?
Good job.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Any last comments?
That I guess the last thoughts is that I go to the bathroom just like most people. There's nothing really special about being able to share your thought and your consciousness and wanting true humanity for all. That's not special. That's actually it's not rare. I think most people want that. I think that people are a little less likely to say that out loud, and we've been berated for being transparent and being affectionate and emotional. This society has changed us, and we need to take that back. We need to be who we authentically feel like we are. That's what I would like to end with.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
Thank you, Tonya.
Yeah. They were going to arrest my neighbor and because they were in a fight, and I made my other neighbors come out.
Yeah, you guys just literally nah.
I wonder what's.
They called there. They told me where'd you have a warrant out of?
Oh, he's a
Okay.
bondsman. I think he's a.
God, they still want you to go. Alright. So,
What is it called where they repossess the car?
Rico, man.